There's an allegory I like to tell when it comes to how the animal protection movement can come together to work better, more effectively. And I call it the cat in the ditch allegory. So if I'm driving down the street and I see a cat in the ditch, I'm going to pull my car over and I'm going to run over and I'm going to save that cat. But somebody else driving down the road might save the cat, but think, I've got to do something. I'm going to build bridges over ditches so cats won't fall in them. Someone else might come along this cat and say, we've got an education problem. We need to have more billboards. Let's keep cats out of ditches. And you could go on with many different examples of how you can help prevent cats from ending up in ditches. And the moral of the story really is we're all working really hard from our own perspective with our own tools. And as long as we're all generally moving in the same direction to protect animals and to promote their rights, we're all doing a good thing in our own ways.
I have two thoughts on how the animal protection community can work together better. One is for us to be intentional about talking with each other. As the movement's grown, it's only natural that it's harder for us to be in dialogue with each other about what we are doing, what we're discovering, and that makes it harder for us to get advantages from each other's work and harder to see how our work may impact, for better or worse, what other people are up to. So part of the answer is doing things like what's happening here with the Brooks Congress, convening people to have these conversations and being intentional about ensuring that as the movement grows, we're taking the time and having the infrastructure to remain in dialogue. That's answer one. Answer two is realizing that very often the work we do as individuals is not inherently in conflict with each other. We have different avenues towards a similar goal, which is to improve the situation that animals find themselves in. And those avenues rarely are fatally in conflict with each other. And when there is a conflict, it's usually one that's far down the line. And so I would suggest we don't need to fight tooth and nail about those conflicts here and now. We could instead embrace the fact that all of that effort is moving us further to a future better place. There are such a wide range of challenges and opposition arrayed against us that I think we need to embrace a wide range of approaches to pushing back against that. And I know that as is with any social movement where people feel passionately about the commitment and the issues, historically we often fight with each other before we win the bigger battle. I am going to suggest that this time we do it the other way around. We win the big battle, and then we fight with each other to figure out exactly what those last steps are going to be. Because by doing that, we're going to make big changes for animals and still be able to get the nuanced details in at the end.
Yeah, I feel like the animal protection community does a pretty good job of working together. People with different viewpoints come together at events like this and share those viewpoints and have collegial exchanges. And so I think that's great. I think we also do a pretty good job of having both folks involved in the policy and the activism and the legal side of things all working together. And I think continuing to do that and strengthening that sort of connectivity is really important too, because sometimes, at least in legal academia, it can feel a little siloed when I don't get out there and talk to the people who are actually doing the work. And so we can think about, issues of standing or personhood, but without seeing what's actually happening on the ground, it just makes us a little bit disconnected. And so I think having exchanges and opportunities for exchange like this, where we're all coming together is hugely important. And also just being open to allowing new people to come in, right? Not excluding someone because they, once said something you disagree with or, wore leather shoes one day, being sure to sort of be inclusive and understand that we have to meet people where they are.
I think aligning where possible and having strategic initiatives where we put aside any differences that we might have and we work together and focus on all attacking the same problem at the same time. So taking the animal welfare movement, working together wherever possible with other social justice movements, including the environmental movement, including the food movement, is, I think, incredibly important. And two, I would say, not getting discouraged. Mother Jones teaches us that social change doesn't happen overnight. She would say the history of social movements is you struggle and fail, you struggle and fail, you struggle and fail, you struggle and succeed. So not to make the perfect the enemy of the good, and know that ours is a generational struggle. And finally, tying in the movement to 21st century challenges, that is the climate crisis and the relationship of that to biodiversity, and the relationship of animal suffering to the loss of biodiversity, and as well as pandemics, and the risk to the food system and to public health involved in those systems.
I think we need to be able to exchange more information from different directions. Again, at the beginning, or many decades ago, we were a small community. So we were aware of the achievements and the obstacles that each of us were facing as we tried to advance animal protection. But nowadays, fortunately, we have become such a large community that we cannot keep up with everyone's work. But it's very important to know what our fellow colleagues over there have been able to achieve or which obstacles they are facing, so we can learn from each other and there is no duplication, overlap, or even too much conflict between what we are trying to accomplish. So exchange of information from different directions. So from developing countries to developed countries, for more advanced countries to less advanced countries, because I fully believe that most of the focus in countries, for instance, such as in Brazil, is on the negative aspect, in what is missing. And I truly believe there are positive things taking place there. There are things there that can be of benefit to other countries for the advancement of animal protection. So I suggest a more fluid exchange of ideas so we can all learn together and grow together.
The animal protection community is actually a very tight-knit community, which is great. And so I really value the way that we all interact and the fact that, we're here at a conference and everyone's friends with everyone. So in lots of ways, it's pretty good as it is. But in terms of what we could improve, I believe, we could have forums where we could discuss ideas. For example, in the UK, many of the cases that I work on, the law will derive from European Union law. So what would be really helpful is to have some sort of platform where I can discuss these cases with other EU lawyers. So if we're successful, they can then replicate the case in the EU. So some sort of sharing platform I think would be incredibly helpful.
My main function is that I do podcasts. I get to talk to a lot of different people, and so I have a pretty good overview. And of course, people do very different things, and some people think that they're doing the right thing, and other people think that they're doing the right thing. But that's the true of any movement. I mean, people are always going. There's a more radical wing. The folks from DXE who are doing Direct Action Everywhere, who are doing really extraordinary work, just bringing the legal system in, really, and at their own personal risk of being convicted of crimes, taking animals out of factory farms and saving them, to the enormous policy work that's being done by other organizations, and to it has to be said, the enormous amount of money that has come into this movement in the past 10 years. It's just changed everything, and has, I think in the past, maybe groups used to be really competing for a very small amount of money. And while there's certainly not enough money to achieve the goal that we all want to achieve, that is to completely change the world works when it comes to animals, and completely change the way the world has always worked. I mean, it's a big lift. And of course, we need more resources than we have. But there are now more resources than there have been in the past. And I think that has helped groups work together better. So I see this as groups and people just working well, not to all doing the same thing, not together in that sense, but each doing different things, which I think is what is exactly required.
I think the animal protection community can work better together by finding those areas where energy, resources, time, and talent can be devoted in ways that help everybody. So if we focus on things like media, for instance, can we have access to media and the use of media and media training even that's going to help everybody, and that it doesn't matter what kind of work people are engaged in. So looking for those kinds of things where we can collaborate in ways that is effective for everybody, no matter what their work is, and finding more of those places and putting some time and energy into that, having conversations about what is it that we need generally, not specifically in the work we do, but more generally, so that we can focus on developing those resources and assets.
I think one of the best things the animal protection community could do is to integrate practice and theory. I run an academic program, and we're very cognizant of trying to figure out ways that we can bring our skills to benefit those that are actually engaged in a direct practice of animal law, either through litigation or legislation or other ways. We have a clinic, which is its own mini law firm within a law school, and that works very closely representing a lot of the animal protection organizations, but we also file several lawsuits of our own. But in a cultivated meat space, that's been a really great opportunity for us to really push some of the federal regulators and offer advice as to how they should lay out the framework for regulating these products, and that has helped lay the ground for a lot of these companies to be able to work as well, and just having that integration between sort of academic institutions and scholarship and those who are actually doing the practice on the ground.
We in the animal protection community can work together in so many different ways. First, by accepting different voices. There are many people providing solutions in a variety of different ways, and instead of criticizing them and judging them for their particular effort, I think we should embrace diversity in the protection, in the movement. For example, I supported as an executive producer a film called The Game Changers, and it was incredibly influential. And while there was some criticism in the animal space that it did not focus on the ethics of the animal debate, we did manage to move the needle, and hundreds and thousands of people went vegan after watching the film. I also believe that if we are hesitant to talk about the animal ethics of animal protection, we're holding ourselves back and we're not being honest. The truth is that a lot of people are here working hard in their daily lives, using all of the resources they have to fight for animal protection, and we have to talk about the ethics. That has to be front and foremost. And if we do that, I think we'll have a more appealing, convincing argument.
The animal protection community is doing a much better job in recent years, and I think the Brooks Institute for Animal Rights Law and Policy deserves some credit in recent years for really bringing people within the movement together. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to do, to look for synchronicity, to look for ways to collaborate, to look for ways to leverage our collective resources and specialties to do more work together, because we don't have the kind of budgets that our opposition does, the animal exploiters, but we have the people. And I think motivating the people, bringing people together, and really bringing more people into the movement is really the goal.
By organizing better, every industry, also governments, they have a global organization to represent themselves. The car industry has a global federation to represent the interest of the car industry. Animal protection organizations did not have that until recently, so that's why we started with the World Federation for Animals, and we are a big tent. We allow any organization that has as main goal defending the interest of animals can join the World Federation. And then that way we can create a joint focus. Everybody has their own way of doing things, their own methods to use. It has to be legal, of course, but everybody can work in their own way because we're all working towards the same goal, and there's no point in finger pointing, you're doing it the wrong way. Let's get all together, but also have a common focus that eventually will lead to the improvement of welfare initially, but also maybe the abolishment of many uses of animals.